Well, there's going to always
Sure.
be incorrect plays, but I try to discipline them to say, go to the positive, reinforce what you're doing right. Why did we get it right? How do we repeat it?
And it's another edition of Hoops Adjacent on the Athletic NBA show. David Aldridge, very lucky to be back in DC because I understand it's like snowing like crazy in Salt Lake City now. And I got out just in time after All-Star weekend. Marcus will join us in a minute, but I wanted to get right to our guest because I am so thrilled to have him. He's been on before and is always, always insightful and makes you think. And that's partly because of his life path and his career. One of the best referees to ever do it in NBA history, Bob Delaney, now the author. He's written a million books, but this book, if you can see it, I don't know if you can see it, Heroes Are Human, Lessons in Resilience, Courage, and Wisdom from the COVID Front Lines. Bob, thank you for joining us, man.
David, always a pleasure and honor to be with you. And it's always great. You know, the longer you're off the floor, the better the referee you were.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm sure. But Bob, you have spent, so much time since you left, active refereeing, and you still consult and do things with the referees. But, the show's called Hoops Adjacent for a reason, because we like to talk about everything and not just basketball all the time. And your book is just, it's fantastic. And I told you this before we started. It really resonated with me because my mom was a pediatric emergency room nurse for 30 years in DC at Children's Hospital, which is like one of the most renowned, pediatric hospitals in the world. And I know what that job did to her physically and emotionally. And she was working literally with life and death every day, like children coming in who were about to die unless something was done to save them. And I can't even imagine the trauma that put on her. But I think about what these COVID nurses and doctors and administrators, and that's one of the great things about the book, Bob, is that you look at the whole thing. It's a 360-degree view. The victims, the people who came in and got sick, you talk to all people at all of those touch points. And I wondered, given your background, not only with basketball, but I'm sure people know Bob was undercover for 3 years, infiltrated the mob, has worked with wounded warriors for the last 3 decades, worked with responders at 9/11. When COVID hit, did you automatically know, oh, these people are going to be in for a world of hurt?
Not immediately, David. The comments that you just made, your mom and nurses do the work of angels. They truly do. And, your mom working with children, one of the things that I always have come to learn, that whether it's law enforcement, firefighters, military, healthcare community, when they're working with children, there's a different dynamic, because many times they see their own children's faces with the children that they're working with. So it becomes another level of emotion that is being processed, and yet still having to do their job in real time while they're feeling those emotions. So they become very good at compartmentalizing emotions in order to do their job. What struck me is, as COVID started to take hold in our country, I was driving by hospitals and I would see signs out front, "Heroes work here." And I know that with the work I've been doing for the past 4 decades with those who serve, anyone that's given the title of hero doesn't like it. I was told I did heroic work and that I was a brave guy, and I felt so hypocritical being given awards back after surfacing from doing the undercover work, because I was scared to death. It wasn't like I was this tough guy, and nobody saw me walking around my house with my gun out, pushing shower curtains back at 2 o'clock in the morning because I was paranoid they were coming to get me. So I sensed that the folks that are being told they're heroes, with the amount of death that's taking place and what they were experiencing, I wanted to understand it more. And I also understood that they were at war with an invisible enemy. And so I paralleled the learning and the knowledge that I had from dealing with those who are at battle on foreign soils to what was taking place in our healthcare community.
It fascinates me that this is so different. As you mentioned, when you're in a war zone situation, you basically know who the enemy is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there are some wars. Obviously, Vietnam was very different
Right.
from the trench wars of World War I and World War II. But for the most part, you know they have uniforms. They're
Right.
they're firing at you, so you know that they're enemy. But with something like COVID, I mean, there's nobody to shoot at, right? I
Right.
mean, there's nobody
Right.
to kind of to fight against. And I just wonder the toll that took on healthcare providers, and again, up and down the chain of command, from the nurses and the doctors to their supervisors who are human beings too, and to the people at who. And one of the most fascinating things is that one of the people you interviewed are people who had to deal with supplies. Like, we got to
Right.
get this
Right.
PPR to people. They
Right.
need it to survive. What do I
Right.
do? I don't have enough. I got to get it. How do I get it? I got to improvise, and
Mhm.
I'm sure there are parallels between that and people at those command levels in the military.
Yeah. You hit so many points. There's so many great points. There were so many levels to this that were taking place. And all we were asked to do was put on a mask and stay 6 feet apart and have a happy hour in our driveways. And we thought we were sacrificing. And then to understand what the healthcare community was going through, they never had to be afraid of bringing cancer home. And now they had to be afraid that they were going to infect their families. And these are folks that are willing to do whatever it takes for actually people they don't even know. Imagine how would they feel for the
Right.
folks that they love. And so, in conversations, they would explain to me that they also had to hold hands with people who were dying. They never had to do that before because usually family members were bedside, or set up phone calls and Zooms and FaceTimes for final goodbyes. One nurse explained to me that she said, people couldn't speak because they're so congested and so overwhelmed with the disease that they would write on a whiteboard, "Please don't let me die." And it just struck me, can you imagine being there knowing that a person is feeling this inside, and how do you continue to do your job while trying to be a human being of being consoling? And so all of this kind of conflict that was going on inside, and then not being able to see the enemy, like you said, that's why, David, in starting the book, I wanted to bring some kind of thought process to what they were experiencing. And my wife, Billy, has run 25 marathons around the world. And it struck me that when she trains for a marathon, she knows what pace she wants to be at. She knows
Yeah.
the beginning, middle, and the end. So I use that as the parallel, because what our healthcare community, they were lined up to go on a long race. They didn't know how long it was. And somebody just yelled out, "Start." And they
Just
didn't know how
run.
long it was going to be. And
Yeah.
so how can you do that? And
Yeah.
and so, Dave Schreiber, Dave, a
Sure.
longtime a writer, is co-author on the book. He and I have co-authored all of the books that I've written. And we wanted to bring analogies to understand what they were going through. So that's where a lot of times we'll come up with the sports analogies to bring that kind of home for folks to just try to imagine being in these positions. And the same thing, like with the military or firefighters, law enforcement that I've worked with for years, I say that the uniform they wear makes them think they can leap tall buildings in a single bound. They can handle anything. And I think scrubs and lab coats do the same for our healthcare community.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And my mom used to talk about doctors sometimes and where the God complex came from and all that stuff. but that's
I've heard
another
those
story.
stories as well.
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
Today's show is brought to you by Run Your Pool. Visit play.runyourpool.com/NBA show to win $1,000. Run Your Pool is the home of competition, bringing sports fans and their friends together to connect and compete. Run Your Pool has over 50 game types for every sport you can think of. It's a one-stop shop for sports gaming. With over 2 million players, there's no better place to run your bracket for your friends, family, or office. And with the madness coming, we've decided to team up with Run Your Pool to give you guys a chance to compete in a bracket challenge. It's super simple. You know how this works. You fill out your picks for all 68 teams in the tournament, and you get points for each pick you get right. Run Your Pool is giving away $1,000 for the top 5 finishers, and you get to compete against us to show how much you know ball. I almost forgot the best part. It's completely free to play. So head over to play.runyourpool.com/NBA show, and don't forget to get your picks in when the bracket is live March 12th. That's play.runyourpool.com/NBA show to win $1,000.
But I did, you mentioned the sports analogy, and I'm really fascinated by it because you certainly worked in that world for a long time as well. And especially the notion, Bob, of peer-to-peer discussion and witness, really. I mean, just because, again, as you say so many times, if you don't know what it was like to be doing that thing, it's hard to speak on it authoritatively,
Right.
and so I always wonder about that, in our business, in my business of covering basketball primarily, we fail as journalists to make people understand how hard it is to be a professional athlete. Like, it's really hard, so, and I wonder if you saw parallels between the nurses and the medical staffs that were able to communicate with one another in real time as this was starting in 2020, and being able to talk to one another and really kind of have that safety valve, that release. And maybe, teams and players where the only people that really understand how hard it is to be an NBA player are other NBA players.
Yeah, I believe wholeheartedly in peer-to-peer conversations. Those who go through a similar experience sharing with each other. What is personal is universal. If you're feeling an emotion, I'm feeling it at some point too, because there's no new emotions in this world. And then when you work in the same environment, those emotions start showing up, those frustrations start showing up. So having someone that you can go to, that you feel safe with, that you trust, to be able to have the conversation is extremely important. I've told this story before, but for me, it was a guy by the name of Joe Pistone, Donnie Brasco. When I surfaced from doing the undercover work, I was dealing with a lot of issues. And Louis Free was the FBI agent who worked my case and Joe's over in New York. And when he put us together, and I looked in Joe's eyes and I read his body language and I heard his words, I knew he got what I was going through. And so I used to refer to it as peer-to-peer therapy, but I think we've over-medicalized this conversation and we scare people away from it. David, this is a human condition. It's not a mental illness. It can lead to mental illness. And when I say over-medicalized, I don't want anyone to misinterpret that I'm saying we don't need the medical side of the house. We do. We have tremendous resources.
Right.
But this has been around forever. Sophocles wrote 2 plays about the warrior not knowing how to act after coming home from battle. After the Civil War, it was referred to as soldier's heart. World War I, shell shock. World War II, battle fatigue. Vietnam, Korean Wars, we refer to it as flashbacks. Today, we refer to it as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Right. And to me, PTSD, probably one of the most loosely used terms in our society. Folks, we do not get PTSD if Starbucks gets our order wrong. But we throw this around as if it's like we're all exposed. We are exposed. I do work with the Harvard Global Mental Health Trauma Recovery Program. I was a student there in 2019, and then now I present at the course. Dr. Malika is the director, and he tapped me to go in and speak about self-care. And Dr. Malika has a very simple statement. He says, trauma is inescapable in life. We are all susceptible. It's going on in Turkey. It's going on in the Ukraine.
Sure.
So I understood it was going to be going on in our healthcare community. I wrote an article in the Tampa Bay Times in August of 2020, predicting a wave of post-traumatic stress in the healthcare community based on what I was seeing. And unfortunately, it's come true.
And how do these folks find, the beginnings of healing in the midst of because they're reliving that trauma every day? It's new trauma. It's another patient. It's another kid. It's another grandmother. and it never stops. And their life's calling is to be there in that place. So where did they start to heal?
One of the things I've learned is that our healthcare community is very good at taking care of us. They're not very good at taking care of themselves.
Right.
And so why COVID shines the light on this subject. This is a conversation that needs to be had and should have been had decades ago. And our healthcare community really does not immerse. I'm starting to go now to nursing schools and having this conversation, and having conversations with pre-med programs to say these are things we have to provide the tools to be able to understand what they're experiencing. And all too often, they're going in blind. And resilience is something that is a learned, the same way we used to talk about leadership, oh, he's a born leader or she's a born leader. No, you learn how to be a leader. You can be trained. You can become a better leader. The same thing I believe with resilience. And I break resilience down into 3 aspects. There has to be a confrontation to the reality. You have to confront what the issue is. But I changed that word to carefrontation, because to me, confrontation sounds very abrupt and negative. But carefrontation, we confront because we care. And then the second part is a search for meaning. Understand what your mission is. And there's a level of, while we all have our own religious beliefs, there's a spirituality to resilience. And the third part I refer to as FIA, F-I-A, flexible, innovative, and adaptive. And David, what I just described, those who serve, whether it be military, law enforcement, firefighters, healthcare workers, all do that on a daily basis operationally. They're not afraid to confront anything. They know what their mission is. They're flexible, innovative, and adaptive. They have plan A, B, C, D, and E. So I've changed the term to operational stress when having this conversation. It's the stress that comes as the result of the profession that you have chosen.
One of the things that fascinated me most, Bob, in the book was one of the doctors who pointed out that you can have positive outcomes after suffering through PTSD.
Right.
And I'd never even thought about that. It's like, wait, how do you have a positive outcome after going through that? And I was fascinated by that notion that it can help you grow in certain areas. And I just wondered, what was your thought process in terms of getting that information from the healthcare field?
Yeah, I often refer to PTSD as post-traumatic stress development versus disorder. There's another term, PTG, post-traumatic growth. After going through, there's no testimony without a test in so many aspects of our lives. And so the same thing takes place here. And at times, I think it's almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy of people start to think, oh, I went through something difficult. There's got to be post-traumatic stress as a result. Yet there's resilience and growth that comes from these kinds of things. That's the reason I refer to it as lessons in courage, wisdom, and lessons in courage, wisdom. And I forget my own book.
Resilience.
Resilience, courage, and wisdom from the COVID front lines. That's the reason for those words to be there. That this took me a long time to understand. But courage is not absent of fear. Courage takes place despite the fear that you experience. Right? And so having those conversations and giving the freedom to have and permission to have the conversation to say, I was scared to death when that was taking place. I've talked to pilots who have told me the same thing. It was like, something happened in that cockpit and they were scared to death, but they did their job.
Right.
And that's what they were trained to do. So it's getting beyond and understanding you're a human being. And that's the reason why it's such an important topic. Heroes are human. They're human beings. They have true emotions. They're ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about, one aspect of that, and that the nurse in Florida, Susie, I believe her name was, that kind of had to dive in and like everybody, you just do what needs to be done that particular day. But she talked about how she was a goalie in high school, and a really good one, on her soccer team. And I just wonder if some of those learned kind of responses that athletes have, which is kind of like you said, it's okay to be afraid. You just have to kind of work through that fear. And that's what we call courage. It's just doing what you do normally, it just under different stresses. And I wonder if athletes in particular maybe can be more successful getting through those traumatic situations because of their training in their past life.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that those things that are learned on sports fields of commitment, dedication, teamwork, trust, you got to trust your teammate, right? That they're doing their job, you're doing your job. The amount of time and effort that's put in, how many times, I always say to folks, young folks, never admire Michael Jordan's abilities to play the game, or LeBron or Kobe or Shaq or Larry or Magic. Admire their work ethic. You're seeing them on a Sunday afternoon.
That's right.
But how many hours did they spend to get to where they are? To me, you and I had such a great gift to be able to be in those gyms, in those arenas when there were no fans around, and you watch them go through.
That's right.
It is not like just when they say shoot around, that's really not, it is work, man. They are putting in work, and it's night in and night out and day in and day in. And that's what's always amazing to me. And I think with Susie Dorner, who you refer to, that dedication and commitment that she learned on a sports field, she carried over, and she does to this day.
Right.
And what's really cool about, she got to be the coin flip in the Super Bowl when it was in Tampa a few years back, and just a special woman.
This podcast is brought to you by Philo. There's nothing better than unwinding and watching a little TV. But you know what's not relaxing is just trying to figure out what to watch, or paying a crazy cable bill every month. That's why I decided to cut the cord. I love TV now because I use Philo as my solution. Philo is live and on-demand TV for just $25 a month. Philo has VH1, BET, AMC, A&E, plus more than 60 other channels like Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, Paramount, Discovery. You never miss a minute of shows that you enjoy watching. I always enjoy watching the Food Network. Is really fun. My wife and even my kids like to sit down and watch the Food Network. Has some great shows there. My wife likes to unwind and watch a little Lifetime. You know what? Philo's got it. Even MTV, right here on Philo. There's no contracts, no commitments, no hassles. Just a better way to watch TV. If you got little kids, you can watch Nickelodeon. Catch the latest episode of Paw Patrol right there on Philo. Philo has no contracts, no commitments, no hassles, just a better way to watch TV. Philo has an unlimited DVR for 1 year. Save all your favorite shows, and you can watch them whenever you want. Philo also allows for multiple profiles and multiple streams, so everybody in your house can be happy, save your own shows simultaneously on 3 different streams, so you don't have to fight over what's being saved or what's being watched. It's so easy to use and really easy to sign up. You can watch from your laptop, from your phone, Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, Samsung, Android TV, you name it. With Philo, you can start watching in seconds for less money, with less hassle, and channel comfort. Sign up today at philo.tv. That's philo.tv, and use the promo code NBA Show to get 50% off your first month.
Yeah. I always remember, Bob, when Larry Bird was at Indy, when he was the coach there, and we were talking, and I said, well, how do you decide who gets to take the last shot at the end of a game? And he said, oh, it's Reggie Miller. And I said, well, why? He said, because he's earned it, because he worked, because I see him every day taking 400, 500, 600 shots after practice is over. And nobody else does it but him. And so that's why he gets to shoot at the end. If he doesn't want to shoot it, that's up to him, but he gets to choose.
Right.
And I always remember that. And whether it's Ray Allen, all the great players, they all are the hardest workers, all of them.
Right.
And I'm sure that comes true in the medical field as well. And the people that are the most, I don't want to say indispensable, but the people that other people seem to lean on are those kinds of people like Susie.
Susie Dorner, yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it over and over in so many stories. I mean, David, one nurse, in talking about resilience and courage and wisdom, she explained to me that she was working 12-hour shifts, and
Yeah.
she was just immersed into the whole world of COVID and just was getting burnt out, and she just wanted to get away and was going to go out on a boat on a lake just to spend the day with her husband and forget about everything else. And they had a great day. And as they pulled in at the end of the day and they were going to dock, she went off to the front of the boat to tie it off. And she started crying uncontrollably. And what happened, David, on land was a small boat that had a tarp over it. And it was the same color of the body bags that she had been putting patients into. And she
Right.
remembered every one of their names and saw every one of their faces. These are the flashbacks. These are the memories that are in their head. It's etched. And for folks to understand, those of us who have lived through 9/11, we can tell you exactly where we were. Tommy Izzo just spoke the other day about he remembered where he was when John
Right.
Kennedy was killed. He remembered where he was on 9/11, and he will forever remember where he was when he got the news of what took place at Michigan State.
Yeah.
And these are traumatic events that come into our lives. And unfortunately, we relive them at times when we go to sleep. That's where nightmares come from. We get into a relaxed state and the body is reacting. So for the healthcare community, they've been reliving these kinds of things when they're in private moments. They remember all of those things. And while death is part of their world, not in the amount that they were experiencing and feeling helpless, not to be able to find a solution.
Well, in the book, well, again, one of the healthcare workers mentions that they started to keep tabs on the patients that survived and the patients that were discharged.
Right.
And even though the numbers were smaller, the fact that they had to celebrate victories, they had to
Yes.
celebrate wins in the midst of all the loss that they suffered.
I love that you bring that up because as a society, we need to do it as well. That was such an important part. When I heard that from the healthcare worker, from the nurse, we're celebrating the wins. We're staying on top of. I'm staying in touch with people. I'm seeing people that survived that I didn't know what happened to them. Then I saw them on another floor. We have to celebrate the wins. And one of the wins that came for us as a society, Simone Biles. When Simone Biles
Right.
went through the twisties and we became educated as to what twisties meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
We understood this is a young woman who is going to be 12 to 15 feet in the air and she's not confident. We were understanding. But think if 2 to 3 Olympics ago, she would have been vilified as being unpatriotic because she didn't tough it out or she didn't, tighten her belt and just go forward. So we're moving the bar as a society. We're becoming more understanding. And to me, that's the small wins in the area of trauma.
I do worry. One thing I worry about, because it was prevalent throughout the book, and understandably so, was that everybody at every touch point, the doctors, the nurses, their supervisors, the people that suffered from COVID, their families, all expressed anger.
Mm-hmm.
Just incredible amounts of anger at people not wearing masks when they should be, and people who were trying to, live in these conspiracy theories. Anger at if you talk to a doctor who didn't answer your question the way you liked, or and it's understandable, but that anger is so corrosive, Bob. And I just wonder how do we begin to address I don't know if coming out of COVID is the right phrase, but it seems that maybe COVID's less prevalent in everyone's lives, but that anger's still there. And how do we kind of deal with that in a good way to lead to good outcomes?
Yeah, I just spoke to a doctor 2 days ago, and she's a leading expert in the area of infectious disease in a particular state, and she was very helpful in this book, yet she has told me she cannot read it. She said she's tried a couple times, and she
Right.
said, I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go back there. And it's so understandable because those wounds are fresh, and not all wounds bleed, and
Right.
invisible wounds may cut as deep as the wounds we do see. And while a scab will grow over a wound that we have on our body, with invisible wounds, emotional wounds, there's a scab that goes over it too, but it can be knocked off just the same as a real
Yeah.
scab, and it brings you back. And those understanding triggers that bring us back to that is extremely important. That's one of the things that I have conversations with the healthcare community about now, is understanding what those triggers are. Particular sounds, sights, smells will bring you back to the original experience.
Yeah.
And while that is not about trying to eliminate post-traumatic stress, it helps people interact with it. So I believe education and awareness works. We've done it with HIV/AIDS. We've done it with drugs, tobacco,
Right.
and alcohol. The more that we're understanding of what's taking place, the better we interact with it. And I learned this from Lieutenant Colonel Tim Karcher. He was hit in Iraq by an RPG, lost his legs. I was doing work with him down at BAMC at the Brooks Medical Center in San Antonio. And Tim said to me in a conversation within a group one day about post-traumatic stress, he said, "Oh, what post-traumatic stress is like? It's like dieting. Some of us need to lose 5 to 10 pounds, some 10 to 20, and some of us are obese. And it changes on an hourly or daily basis." And I said, "Tim, what a great way to describe something that doesn't have a
Interesting.
quantitative measure to it." I said, "I'm going to use it in my presentations because I've been 5 to 10 pounds overweight since I came out of the womb. And I've been 10 to 20 and I've been obese." But David, at times it just meant buying bigger pants. It didn't mean that I went in the
Right.
house and stopped living. So
Right.
it's not about eliminating post-traumatic stress. It's learning how to interact with it in a healthy way.
Yeah, that's fast. That's great. In the book there, one of the gentleman that got COVID, he wrote about having this buzzing that he couldn't understand
Yes,
for
yes,
months
yes.
afterwards. Nobody understood what it was, and then he finally realized that it was the beeping sound of the
Yes.
ventilator that he was on
Yes.
when he was unconscious.
Yes.
And it had gotten through
Yeah.
somehow, and he remembered it finally. And that's just, it's amazing what the mind retains.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that was
how-
John Place. John Place was a victim of COVID, and I heard his story on the Howard Stern show, and then I tracked him
right.
down. And John and his wife Michelle were so willing to help us understand. And your point, that the subconscious of him being unconscious and yet still hearing those things, and then he couldn't understand why was that sound bringing him like not pleasant thoughts, and so he had to figure out. And it's always interesting to me to find those kinds of things because we all experience those. When we have an experience, for me, it's the smell of burning flesh. As a young state trooper, I had a older couple that were in an automobile accident, and they were caught inside the car, and the car was on fire. And myself and the other trooper tried to we couldn't get into the car, and you could hear them screaming. But it's the smell of those burnt tires that brings me back to that event. And I can still, when I say that, it still conjures up in my mind, and the emotion, and
Sure.
that you get that feeling in your throat of you felt like you should have done more, or you could have done more. And that continues to haunt me. And David, that was when I was 21 years old, and I'm 71 years old now.
Right.
That's 50 years ago. That experience happened, but it's so fresh in my mind.
I want to pivot just briefly because I always wondered, how referees kind of compartmentalize, because nobody that doesn't do this job understands the job at all.
Right.
We think we do, but we don't really. And it's amazing. I was walking into one of the events at All-Star Weekend with this family, a young man and his kid that he was holding, and his wife. And the man looks at me and he goes, "Hey, did you go to American University?" And I went, yeah. How did you know that? He said, oh, I reffed one of your games last year. You were at the game. And I was like, really? He's like, oh yeah, yeah. And I just, and we were just talking about, his job and stuff. And I've written about referees over the course of my career, but it's still not the same as being one,
Right,
and
right.
I wonder how do the guys, and when you talk to them, how do they kind of deal with that stress of being involved in very high stakes, highly emotional, and now increasingly highly bet upon games where the calls that they make can impact the game and they're just trying to get it right.
Right. Yeah. So as a referee, for 25 years in the league, and then 5 years I was in management, vice president, referee operations, director of officials, and now I'm with the Southeast Conference,
Right.
doing advising work. One of the things that we reinforce is the why and the how. Why did we get it right, and how can we repeat it? So what I ask officials to do, and have always, if the data is saying we're getting 92% correct when we're making a call, then I want them to go look at that 92%. Because if we chase the 8%, we're going to
Right.
lose a portion of that, right? Reinforce the positive. More often than not, as we all do in our society, when we get something wrong, we want to go to that first. Well, there's going to always be
Sure.
incorrect plays, but I try to discipline them to say, go to the positive, reinforce what you're doing right. Why did we get it right? How do we repeat it? Then take a look at the plays you've missed. Why did we miss it? And how can we adjust to be able to try and get a piece of that 8%? We're not going to get to 100%. There's no perfection in this business.
Right.
Replay has brought, high technology has brought an expectation by fans and media and players and coaches
Yeah.
that they get it correct. How could they have missed that? How could that have not been called? So I think that compartmentalization during the course of a game is important as well. When you kick a call,
Yeah. Sure.
and
Sure.
what I found is early in my career, I wanted to try and prove I was right, versus now later in my career, I would just say, I just kicked that play.
Yeah.
When you tell a player or a coach that you just kicked it, they hit you on the rear end and say, get the next one.
Right.
It's the end of it. It's when
Yeah.
you bow your neck and try to prove that you're wrong. There are doctorates in the game of basketball along those sidelines.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot fool NBA coaches.
Right,
They
right, right.
know. So trying to con them or say, no, I got that right, they're not going to believe that.
No.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at First Leaf. Visit firstleaf.com/NBA show to get your first 6 bottles for $39.95 plus free shipping. Imagine this scene. You're at the crowded supermarket, cruising the wine aisle, feeling lost, intimidated, or maybe you're just tired of always buying the same stuff. You want to explore, but you don't know where to start. You need to try First Leaf. Here's why. As America's most personalized wine company, First Leaf takes the guesswork out of wine selection. It's super easy. You just take their short taste quiz and you rate the first few wines that they send you. Then First Leaf is going to use your responses to curate a customized selection of delicious, award-winning wines based on your personal preferences with 96% accuracy. Sign up today and you'll get your first 6 bottles for $39.95 plus free shipping. Go to tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show. That's tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show to get your first 6 bottles for $39.95 plus free shipping. Tryfirstleaf.com/NBA show.
Bob, I used to always say this to this day. If a politician held a press conference and said, you know what? I screwed up. The thing you're accusing me of, I did.
Yep.
I have no follow-up question. At that
Exactly.
point. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
you've totally disarmed the whole situation, And I wonder, taking this back to your book, if people are now more willing in the midst of kind of assessing COVID and how we all responded and how the medical community did, will they look at the positives? Will they look at the things that they did right under these incredibly stressful situations? Or will they, as humans tend to do, fixate on the things that went wrong?
I think in the long run, we look at the wins. You know, you triggered something in my mind as a result of this conversation, and so I'm going to go back to an Easter Sunday game many years ago. I'm working with the great Hugh Evans, who had just gotten into the Hall of Fame, God
Right.
rest his soul,
Yeah.
and Leroy Richardson, and we're in Miami. They're playing the Knicks. At the end of the game, this is before we have replay. Allen Houston goes up. I wipe it out. It should have been good.
Yeah.
And the Knicks would have won. And Van Gundy's yelling and screaming at me. We're going back, and I get to the locker room and I know I missed this call. And it's like it's late in the season. It causes the Knicks not to have home court in the playoffs. And by fate, I happen to have their first playoff game, and it's on the road against Indiana. And so I walk into the arena, and Spike Lee is all over me, sitting courtside, yelling and screaming, "We should be in New York because of you." And I said, "Hey, Spike, I've seen every one of your movies, and they ain't all hits either, brother." And so, we make mistakes as human beings.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope that as they assess, that they understand that they saved a lot of people's lives.
Yes. Yes.
Even in the midst of coordinated disinformation, people got vaccines and they lived and they're living because of it. And people that went into hospitals got saved by these healthcare professionals, and their families are able to spend time with them as a result of it. There was a lot that they did right.
Yes, and there's a fog of war, right? So we hear
Yeah.
about the fog of war on the battlefield. There was a fog of war with the invisible enemy COVID as well, early stages. That was the reason that I wanted to spend time with those behind the lines, just like the generals and those that are
Right.
making decisions, because they're getting information on one day that the next day it's old information. It is not relevant any longer. And so they
Right.
had to constantly go through that. And there's a frustration level that exists there for decision makers, because now they're the leaders and they're learning as they're going. And we all were frustrated with COVID. Put the
Yeah.
mask on, not put the mask on, do this, do that.
Right.
Magnify that 100 times by the people that are on the front line of COVID, the healthcare community.
Yeah.
They were as confused as well, not because they didn't know, because they were learning as it was taking place.
Yeah. And that the inability to kind of allow people to have new information. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand that. Like, we all benefit when you get more information. It's
Exactly.
always helpful.
Exactly. And you're talking about brilliant human beings.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I tell people I get to go and do grand rounds now. Like I was at Baylor Scott and White and at Moffitt Cancer Hospital. And here's a guy that I thought my middle name was, is he eligible? When my coach would say every week, is he still eligible? Can he play? And I'm there sharing time with them, and they're just brilliant. And to hear the work they do, and how I was with a doctor from Africa. He was 9 years old when he started college. This guy
Wow.
is amazing.
Oh my
He
God.
is like off the charts brilliant, and just an amazing guy. And I asked him, I said, "How did you know you wanted to go into healthcare?" He said, "My father had chickens," and he said, "at our house. And when I was like 7 years old, I said, I'll take care of the sick chickens." So he had
How
an
about that?
affinity to
Knew it
wanting to
already.
help.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing story.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you about one thing. I think people in that profession are doing God's work, because it's unbelievably stressful. And they're the ones that are always there holding people's hands and helping them transition, whether it's to health or to the next plane. And they're both traumatic, right? And so
Yeah, and David, this is where we are now. We need to honor, thank, and support them, because we were all about banging pots and clapping at 7 o'clock at night every night during the height of COVID and honoring them. Well, where are we now? What are we doing now?
Right.
These folks are burnt out.
Right.
Some are leaving the profession because they've had enough. That hurts all of us, because we're losing expertise. in the
Right.
healthcare community with them leaving. So one of the things that we're doing is honor, thank, and support. And we're gifting the book to the healthcare community. I go in and give a presentation down at Moffitt Hospital, BMW Sarasota and Rittenhouse publications sponsored the book. We have other organizations in conversation with teams. MBA Cares has helped us bring the books. We don't want them buying it. We want to hand it and say thank you, and honor, thank, and support our healthcare community is our mantra.
Well, I really hope that people took what you just said to heart, because I'm sure everybody listening knows somebody in that profession, whether family or friends, and you really should do that. You should take a moment to just say thank you,
Yes.
because what they have done the last 3+ years is just astounding. And I hold them in the highest regard, because as you know, Bobby, there's most people, when there's a big boom, most people run away, but there's a few people that run toward, and they're the
Right.
people that always run toward. I say that I am not objective about this.
Yeah.
I say that wholeheartedly. I'm not objective at all about this, but the
Well,
book.
David,
Yeah.
think about this. Military goes to where trauma is.
Yeah.
The healthcare community has trauma walk in the front door.
Right.
Comes to
Right.
them. Comes
Right.
right to them.
That's right. That's right. Bob, it's a great book. Heroes Are Human: Lessons in Resilience, Courage, and Wisdom from the COVID Front Lines. Bob Delaney with Dave Schreiber. Just fantastic book, Bob. I thank you for sending it to me. And you always, in all your salutations, end it with stay safe. So I say the same to you. Please stay safe out there. And thank you for helping educate all of us about who the real heroes are in our society.
Thanks, David. Stay safe to you as well, to your audience, but also take care of you. Self-care does not mean selfish.
I have the card. Thank you for enclosing
Yes.
the self-help card, and I'm gonna try to stick to that.
Yes, it's not easy. Self-care does not mean selfish. We need to take care of ourselves to be the best version of ourselves to make this world a better place.
Bob, thank you very much. And all of y'all, listen to us. Leave that 5-star review on Apple, on Spotify, Apple Play, Google, wherever you get this fine American podcast. And as Marcus would say, if you can't leave a 5-star review, keep it to yourself. See you next time.